on the podcast again. He says that, Teresa hasn't been very nice to him lately, but he will continue to be nice to her and speak highly of her, right? That's what he's going to continue to do. So Frank, after the reunion with Louie, he contacted Louie and said, let's have a sit down, let's talk as men, right? So Louie wanted to do that as well and just hash things out. Teresa was very apprehensive of the meeting. And those are not my words. Those are her words. You can go and listen to her podcast, Namaste Bitches. A few episodes ago, I can't remember the name of the episode, but Teresa says, that she didn't want Louie to meet up with Frank because she felt like, Frank is just trying to stay on the show. He's kind of just thirsty. There's things that he's willing to do just to stay relevant now that Dolores has a man and he's no longer needed. That was basically her position on her own podcast about Frank. And she said that, she was kind of mad that Frank basically threw Louie under the bus at the reunion. I don't really feel like Frank did that. If one thing, he's catching some flack for not really like standing up to Louie, right? So, he basically said something outside, like in the men's room. And then when he came on stage, he was not willing to talk about it because Dolores shut it down and he respected her wish at that point. So I'm not really sure what Teresa's mad about, but anyhow, Frank and Louie met up, and I'm not going to say that they saw eye to eye. Like, according to Frank says that they have just decided to agree to disagree, but they would kind of like just squash things and be cordial. So now Frank said that him and Louie don't have any animosity towards each other and that there's no beef, right? So I don't really understand like why Teresa feels like she needs to constantly protect Louie. Louie is a grown man. I'm sure he got it. I'm sure he can take care of his relationships with other men. And it's like Teresa doesn't need to get involved. Like, if Louie doesn't have a problem with Frank anymore and Frank doesn't have a problem with Louie, I don't understand why Teresa has a problem with Frank. But anyways, I digress when it comes to that. So another thing that was quite interesting, another question, had to do with the prenup. Like, I guess somebody wanted to know what was Frank's professional opinion on Teresa and Louie not getting a prenup. Because, Frank used to be an attorney. So you got to love Frank for that. He doesn't really get involved, and he's just like, to each his own. They can do whatever they want. You know what I mean? They didn't see a necessity to get a prenup, so that's on them, right? And he also says something that he said on 2T's in the pod. He says that the thing that people do not understand is that Louie is very well off financially. He's doing very well. He doesn't need Teresa's money. That's what Frank said, right? And at that point, when you listen to this, you're like, okay, I've heard of this before. People say that Louis is well off. Louis says that he's well off. So, and even Teresa at some point in time, I think she was on Watch What Happens Live, and that was before she got married to Louis. Everybody was asking her, why don't you get a prenup? Why don't you get a prenup? You need to protect yourself. And then Teresa said, I'm not worried about it because he has more than me. He has more than me. That's what she said, right? I know over the past few weeks or months, I've heard people say the opposite, but I've actually heard it from Teresa's mouth. She said, and I believe it was on Watch What Happens Live, she said, he has more than me, Louis. So, which brings me to my next point, because, a few weeks ago, Kim D, she's on the podcast on Saturdays, and she was talking about Teresa selling her home, the home that we saw her all of those years, the house that she was living in. So basically, Kim D was saying that when Teresa sold the property, she sold it and there was no equity in that home. Right? She also said that Teresa didn't put any money into the new home that she currently lives in with Louis. And as you guys know, only Louis is on the title of the house. The house is in an LLC. And according to Louis, it's paid in full, right? So there's no mortgage on the property. So apparently. So, if we just go back a few years, Teresa had that house, like her original house, listed for a certain amount of money, and then it sat on the market for quite some time. Then she reduced it, sat on the market for quite some time. I think she had an offer, didn't go through at some point in time. I can't remember why it didn't go through, but it didn't. And then she had to put the house on the market again. And then eventually I think she reduced the price of the house three times. So if what Kim D is saying is correct, there was no equity on the home. Like, I doubt that Teresa made any money out of the sale of her home, right? It's possible. And you know what? No judgment to her. I'm saying she was a single mom at some point in time. She also went away. Obviously, when you're away, you can't make money. Joe didn't have like a secure job while he was on the outside. And, his options were a little bit limited as well. And even Teresa, when she came out, she said, I'm in a situation right now that I need to make money, and I need to make money fast. And that's the reason why she was writing that book, because she had to make money. She said all of her businesses went to shit. Fabellini, her cookbooks were not selling. So she didn't really have any money at that time when she came back season 7, right? And then Joe went away for 4 years. So it's very possible that, I don't know, like Teresa she may have had to mortgage the house even more. And if you guys recall, and I'm not saying that this is a reliable source, but everybody enjoys a little gossip here and there. So if you guys are familiar with the show, you know about Fame Horgas, that blog, that website that has such juicy information. But I remember reading a long time ago, and don't quote me on this, guys, I'm just paraphrasing here. It's somewhere in the archives of that blog. It was saying that at the time, right, and we're talking about 2014, 2013 maybe, they were saying that, the Judices had no assets, really. Like, everything was pretty much a liability. The house was mortgaged. The Shore house was mortgaged. Like high mortgage, like even the ATVs, maybe the cars and all of that stuff. Like, there was like a bunch of liens on everything that they owned, right? And even we see it on the show that the Shore house got repossessed. They lost the Shore house, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if at the time of the sale of her property, her primary residence, that there was no equity and that Teresa didn't make any money. And another thing is, back to that same season 6, just before Teresa was getting prepared to go away, she was sitting with Dina. Dina, she came in to do a vision board with Teresa. And then Teresa was saying, I feel like I'm chasing my tail because I'm paying all of these like expensive attorney fees, and college is right around the corner for Gia, and I have no college money saved up for the kids. I have no money for that because I'm paying for lawyer fees all the time, right? So that was one thing. And then recently, when Teresa, was saying, I don't know how I'm going to coexist with Melissa and my brother, right? So you're going. Teresa also said, I need to go back to the show because I don't have any money saved up for Gia going to law school, and that's expensive, right? So Teresa may not have any money in the bank. And that would be so unfortunate, because I don't know how much she makes on paper. Like, I know a lot of people have been saying that she makes 2.2 million per season, and that's fair. I wouldn't be surprised if that's how much she was actually making. But what I'm saying is, that's a lot of money to make. And for her not to have anything in the bank, like, saved up for college, for university, for herself, or anything like that, it seems like you're putting a lot of your life out there, and it's not always positive. It's very negative, relationship with her brother. Like, there's a lot of stuff that is happening on that show that is sad and negative, and it would be nice if she had like something to show for it. But anyways, I digress. When it comes to this, though, one thing that doesn't really seem to check for me when it comes to that whole situation, I know Louie likes to say he's rich and he has a lot of money and all of that. And he even says to Teresa, season 12 finale, says, I work hard, so you never have to work a day in your life. How lucky is that, right? Let's take our private jet and move to our big house, right? That's what he says. But Margaret, she made an interesting comment on the after show. She, during her interview, she was saying to the producer, Yeah, we hear that Louis is very rich, but he hasn't taken Teresa from the show. They're still filming. And I gave money to their for their wedding, and the money was cashed within less than 24 hours. I got an alert because I get an alert whenever it's over 500 due to fraud reasons. So she said that normally when it's your second wedding, you shouldn't be asking for monetary gifts. And if you're so well off, why was it cashed out like so, you know what I mean? Like so quickly in less than 24 hours. That's according to Margaret. So I thought that was interesting too. And then another thing that I do recall, maybe the year prior, like before they got married, I can't remember what's the name of that website, but it's a website that, you can have it's kind of like for your wedding, and then you can ask people to send money so they can fund for your honeymoon or something like that. I remember they had that in place too. And I thought it was funny back then because I was just like, why do you need people to pay for your honeymoon, right? If you're spending that much money on your wedding, you should be able to afford your own, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, I thought it was a little weird, but